And we are live. Yay, it actually worked this time. um, there's
Let's
a
go.
victory. Yep. Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West, and I guess the East, because I'm joined by the lovely Eleanor again. This
Hello.
will be this will be initially a stream, and then I'm gonna just download and turn it into a proper video because videos get more views than streams. And I can then share it everywhere. I wonder if I can upload it to Twitter like I originally intended, just as a video. I don't know. So last time we left off, Beren and Luthien had just escaped from Sauron. They had gotten the better of him, and we must now go, meanwhile, to Nargothrond. And many of the elves who were prisoners of Sauron end up going back home. And of course, this ends up causing some confusion because then the people find out that Finrod had died. And I'm just following here. But the trouble is, Celegorm and Curufin ended up kind of making an enemy of Orodreth, who doesn't take it very well that they didn't treat his brother very well. So there's a bit of friction here. And he vows, how does he put it? Yet neither bread nor rest would he grant to Celegorm and Curufin within his realm. And he swore that there should be little love between Nargothrond and the sons of Feanor thereafter. So, oops. And of course, this is going to bite Maethros in the rear the most, because he's the, I guess, janitor of the Feanorians. He has to always clean up after his brothers and his father.
Yeah.
I always feel bad for him. Maethros just feels like, under other circumstances, he'd have been a great king, but he's got these brothers and his father who are just like they do nothing but cause
Drag
trouble.
him down.
Yeah, and I think that's the tragedy of Maethros. And I wonder if his participation in the kinslaying layer is simply him having a psychotic or psychological breakdown, and because everything he's done has failed, and he's dragged down by his brothers. And I think the only one who tried to help him was Maglor. So Maglor gets massive points for that. He gets brownie points. Sorry, my throat's not as great today as what it was on the last episode.
It's okay. It's okay.
So we have, however, Beren and Luthien who end up wandering through the forest of Brethil, and they end up near the borders of Doriath because Beren, I think, well, he wants to return Luthien to her dad, but Luthien is not willing to part with him because she's basically a shoujo manga lead. I could not resist that joke. I've not yet had the chance to crack it in my podcast with Dan. Because in shoujo, they always make the girl the, I guess, decisive one where I think there's Anatolia story, there's Sailor Moon. It's always the girl who says, no, I won't be parted from the guy. And for some reason, this is a thing. Or maybe I just misremember things because it's been 10 years since I read that stuff. I don't remember. I've been reading male fiction more than female these days. And she pretty much tells him that he has to choose to either relinquish the quest and his oath and seek a life of wandering, or challenge the power of darkness. And of course, Beren wants to choose to defy Morgoth. And who should show up but Celegorm and Curufin, the knights in not shining armor. And I don't know how else to describe them. They're just they're a pair of walking disasters, and I love them so much for it because they they push the plot forward.
They are like
You
they are
can't.
like villains in Disney movie.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
the most obvious villain in Disney movie.
Mm, yeah. That's them. They're basically Gaston. Um.
Yeah.
Oh man, I got to rewatch that movie. Um. Uh, no one tries to kidnap resisting young girls quite like Gaston, Caligorn, and Kurufin do. Um, and of course, a fight breaks out. And this is where we see that Baron's kind of cool. Um, he's actually a really good fighter. And I kind of see some Robin Hood influence over the character. What I mean is, Robin Hood is
Indeed.
um, he's a traditional English folk hero, but he's a swashbuckling one, like with a sword and with bow and arrow. He's this swashbuckling hero, and he always saves Maid Marian. But here, there's the leap of Beren, and Beren, how shall I put it, leaps upon the horseback, and I believe the horse is speeding, which, um, and the thing is, how do I describe it? I worked on a horse farm. I lived on one once, and horses are fast and really strong. You don't want to just startle one or jump on one. Um, they're 800 to 1,200 pounds. These things are a force of nature, quite literally. So Baron having the courage to leap on a one, while he's also
Hmm.
enraged because they're stealing Luthien from him, is just like, when I first read this, I didn't think it was terribly badass. But after living on a horse farm a few years ago during COVID, you kind of go, wow, Baron was, what's the English term? Chad. He's just the ultimate badass. He's just really cool because he does that. And he, of course, flings them both. Well, Celegorm is taken down by Huan, and Baron takes down Kurufin and pretty much holds him at sword point, or I think knife point. And
Yeah.
it's a knife made by Telkar of Nogrod. And of course, Baron um, nearly ends up killing him, but Luthien forbids it. And one thing I've talked about with Daniel is that in some ways, this is a no good deed goes unpunished, because later Kurufin and Celegorm end up causing the death of Dior, the son of Beren and Luthien.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that Tolkien has Kurufin and Celegorm get their revenge on Beren and Luthien. Long term, they get
Yeah.
their revenge and they win. And so I will actually ask you, morally, like, yeah, I know Luthien's in the right, but let's think about what kind of people these two are. They're spiteful, they're cruel, and they're wicked. Um, it's a question of, and there's a similar thing that happens. I think it's a little dorky, but in Ninja Turtles, where the former owner of the rat, Splinter, that was his name, spared his enemy's younger brother, and that younger brother of his enemy came back to kill him and his wife, and
Yeah.
that guy became the Shredder. So you've got a similar thing that happened, and in there they show that as a mistake on the rat former Splinter's former owner. So my question is this a mistake Luthien makes? Should she have let Baron kill Kurufin?
That's a good question. I want to ask one question as well. Um,
Go ahead.
let's say, if Baron did kill Curva and Caligon, and Luthien didn't have anything to do with it. She didn't, like, she got nothing to do with it. Let's say
Mhm.
Caragorn and Crúthén was killed, will the sack of Doriath would sack of the Doriath happen? Like, would it happen essentially?
Now, there are two forces at work with that question. You have the oath of Feanor, which we both know all the Feanorians are bound to obey. But here's another thing. Maethros does not seem to have been terribly intent on the oath.
Yeah, true, true. That's
Even,
true.
like, I think in some ways he was trying to break it without breaking it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and here's the thing. I always took the fan theory that, maybe it's just my theory, Celegorm and Crúthén are the force behind the sack of Doriath. They're the ones
yeah,
egging it on and basically saying, I'm going to do it no matter what you do. The
yeah,
twins follow because they follow. They are not um, an independent force.
yeah.
Who
They are
else is?
not the one who make decisions.
No, no, they're not. Um, Meglor, I don't think would ever push for this sack. It's just not in him. Um, Maethros is the strongest of the Feanorians. He's called the Tall, but in French, Tall becomes Grand, or in English, when you translate it back, it becomes Great. So in French, I
Yeah,
guess you could say the title is Maethros the Great. Um, he's the mightiest. He's the swordsman. He's the worthy son of Feanor. But I'm not sure that I don't know if it would happen or not. It That's a case of I'm not sure. I want to say
yeah. I'm
no,
not sure. Yeah,
but the oath. The oath has a life of its own. And I
yeah.
think here's my theory. We got here the north. I think that because Melian had gone away and Dior is really dumb, I'm trying to be polite.
Hmm.
There's a lady present after all. Um, the thing is, I think Morgoth would sack Doriath. So the sack would happen, but
For the
under
Summerall,
Morgothian. Well, I think his
for
forces
the
would sack it.
Summerall.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and I think this would involve probably Maethros and the others trying to then seize the Silmaril as it's escaping, and
Yeah.
that's where I think what would happen would still happen in some ways the same way, but um,
Yes, I
under
think
different
so.
auspices. But here's the thing: the important difference is Maglor and Maethros would not be tainted, so they might be able to touch the Silmaril. But on the other hand, one could also theorize they might still be tainted because they take it from Eonway without just cause. So this is a scenario where it could go either way. The real question is, after there's a sack, what do the Feanorians do? And I think long term, um, my theory would be that um, they kind of have to try to take it. Maethros will still die, I think, no matter what. I think he was doomed. Um, I think Maglor, um, it might end up the same way. I think long term, the same thing would happen. It's just the Feanorians would not sack Doriath. But I think, um, on the other hand, the other question is, could Luthien love Beren if he did this thing? If he slew Curufin and Celegorm when he had them at his mercy?
Yeah,
Could she love a man
yeah.
who would do that?
That's a good
So
point. Yeah,
the trouble is he's kind of forced to. Uh, Beren, if Luthien was not around, Beren would do it. He'd overpower the two and he'd kill them. But because she is there, he cannot actually harm the two of them. So it comes down to that. And this is a very fascinating scenario. But the sad thing is, as with all of Tolkien, and I'll even extend it to Robert E. Howard's literature, With these two, no good deed ever goes unpunished. Um,
Yeah.
although the difference is Howard has his Conan stories end on a happy ending because he decides that finally one good deed should go unpunished. Most good deeds go punished, but you know you need your happily ever after. But with Tolkien, if we think about it, even the epilogue of Lord of the Rings has some pretty sad things that happen. And you've got Dagodegaroth, which finally sets everything right. That's the real happily ever after. Oh, Mark. Guten Naj Nach Mittag. Good afternoon. I hope I pronounced that right. But the
Afternoon.
sons of Fëanor are mostly only tolerated, not at all liked. Yes, although I think Maethros and Maglor are liked. Amrod and Amras, I think they are. Um, I'm not sure. Not enough is written about them.
They
This
are
is
kind of just there.
yeah. This is
They don't,
where
the twins didn't do too much to
and
have
if I,
a bigger
yeah,
screen time.
if I could revive Tolkien and I had a gun, I would point the gun at him and tell him, "All right, now get to work on Amrod and Amras. Um, here's a typewriter. Get to work." Actually, I need to buy a typewriter. I'd also have to bring that along and some paper. But anyways, so we've got the two of them. They're released, and of course, we get the Song of Parting, which is sung, I believe, by Juan, which I like this. Let's see. Let's hope my voice doesn't crack. Farewell, sweet earth and northern sky, forever blessed, since here did lie, and here with lissom limbs did run, beneath the moon, beneath the sun, Luthien to Nuviel, more fair than mortal tongue can tell, though all to ruin fell the world, and were dissolved and backward hurled, unmade into the old abyss. Yet were its making good for this, the dusk, the dawn, the earth, the sea, that Luthien for a time should be. I can't quite sing it that well, but I tried.
Pretty good,
Um,
actually.
uh, I don't know. Matt and I are always trying to compete to see if we can sing the songs of Tolkien. In our, well, you've seen our Lord of the Rings stuff. We're trying. We're trying. We got to put ourselves more out. Um, uh, Maethros was liked by Fingon for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fingon had good taste in friends. I love that Barahir's ring, aka the influence of Finrod, saves Beren in Thingol's Hall. Yes, I like that. Very important.
Yes.
Now, Luthien hears the song and she sings an answer as she goes through the woods. And Juan, consents once more to be her steed. And because Baron's basically ditched them because he's not really sold on bringing her along. But the problem is she's basically a 90s Japanese magical girl. So she's like, what's she gonna do? You can't really stop her. You still owe us the ring
Yeah.
verse in the dark speech. Okay, maybe at the end, Mark. Maybe at the end. If I remember, I'll sing that in the dark speech. If it's, I don't know the page number. So that's your job, Mark. You find me the page number. I'll sing it at the end. But I wouldn't want to scare poor Eleanor because the dark speech is pretty dark stuff. I could not resist that. But the separation of these two, then Luthien insisting on coming along. How many times has it been that he's actually kind of tried to leave her behind? I think it's let me see. I'm not going to count the first separation at Doriath. He tries to leave her once. I think
Twice?
this is, I think,
Twice.
yeah, twice so far. And there's
Yeah.
once during the hunt. right? Like right before the hunt that him and Thingol and
Yeah.
Huan go on. So 3 times 4, if we count um, the first separation at Doliath. And what this is a, well, I think it's a numerological thing. Ugh. A numerological thing that Tolkien's doing.
Hello?
Because,
Your screen kind of off.
oh,
Your
sorry.
network off.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, what are you saying?
Uh,
What are you saying?
uh,
Say.
there's something there's something in uh, well, in ancient, I believe, Greek. Uh, there's also biblical, so like Christian, and I think even Norse literature. The numbers 3 and 4 recur over and over and over and over again. What is it? 3, 4, 9, wait, 3, 4, 7, 9, 12, and 40 recur constantly. Like in, like, I think every book of the Bible, almost every Nordic story, there's some reference to these numbers. And it's really interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, Dang, you're off the hook this time. I'm at my parents for Easter, so there's no book to look for the page, but I will remember. Okay. Well, maybe I'll remember. I think that's from Elrond's Council, isn't it? Anyways, um, okay, so it is. Um, so we have the gates of Angband. No, the gates of Angband. There, much better. Um, and of course, oh, we get one of my favorite characters, Kokoroth, the Jaws of
Okay.
First. No, wait, that's he is named in the Tale of Those Days, and Anfanglir, the Jaws of First. That's it, and he's guarding the doors in case Huan should ever come along. So it's good to know Morgoth predicted Huan would someday arrive. I wonder, is that Morgoth's foresight or just his intellect that he wants to be careful?
I don't
Um,
really know.
hmm. Well, either way, Kokoroth is not enough because Luthien's there and puts him to sleep.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's a very interesting point I noticed that about Luthien's power, because you can see that all of her power are
mhm.
like they are not like destructive, you know, because
No.
Luthien, every time Luthien face an enemy, she was kind of like put it to sleep, and she never like destroy something. I think that's very
Yeah.
unique for Tolkien's writing, because in modern fantasy, if you describe let's say a strong character in general, you will describe him or her like he has the power of
Destroying.
destroy, like I will kick somebody off. But Luther's power is
Well, it's a fairy
more
tale
like
power.
yes, it's more like a constructive, you know,
Yeah,
because her
it is.
singing,
Well,
her songs
yeah.
is constructing like magic. I think
Mm.
it's so beautiful. You know what I'm saying?
I
Because
yeah.
I think Tolkien is someone who believes in the power of mercy and to create, not destroy.
Mhm.
I think that's a very important thing in his writing.
I, I think you're right. I also think he's like all those fairy tale princesses from Brothers Grimm. He's infusing them all into one. Like Luthien's the combination of,
Yeah.
not the combination, like the synthesis of all. She has all their powers, but it's in song, like you said. Uh, Now, music is something sacred to the Celts in particular. It was believed the world was sung into existence in ancient Celtic mythology um, by, I think, Brigid. And um, later, the Celtic churches and the French Gaelic, no, Gaelic, the Gaelic churches always infused music into everything. And some of this crossed over into Great Britain. But Britain draws more from Germanic words. It's very strange. But the thing with Tolkien is music meant a great deal to him, like the Wagner operas. And if we look at Luthien, I think he was tuning into the fact of, how do I put it? I know a lot of people would object today, but there's a difference in the way the male and the female energy works and how we perceive the world. For example,
Yeah.
to ride into combat and destroy your enemy, that's very masculine. Women, how do I put it? Bulk at it a little. There's a sense, well, I can't just destroy, like, root and stem, like cut that down, make it so it never was. There's something in the male that says, well, I can go into battle with a sword and kill him and put an end to the problem.
Yeah.
The female doesn't have, I think Tolkien realized there's something in the feminine that does not like that. It doesn't click. Now, there have been women who've done it in history. There have been. But very rarely. And typically, it's been men who, like, when you have a Uzershin Hatshepsut or Elizabeth the First, she gives the order and the men execute the prisoner or the criminal. But so the woman's not doing it herself. But at the same time, you look at Elizabeth and I think Uzershin, they would never like go and sit and watch the execution. So, like, ironically, peasant women would, but peasant women were kind of cool that way. They're badass. They were willing to sit and watch this stuff. But the thing is, I think there's a difference in the male and female energy and perception of the world. So Luthien's very much the feminine. I think she's the most feminine character I've ever seen in literature. She's just utterly female.
Yeah.
And okay. I think there's something I can't imagine her killing. I think it would taint her in a way. So this is something I know, like, filmmakers all over the world, because Luthien, your friend, and we've occasionally talked. I've not talked to her in months. She's explained to me, because she understands the film industry a lot better, both in the US, Britain, and China and whatnot. And she's explained to me all of them would agree you need to have someone like Luthien actually kill their enemies. But that's a misunderstanding of the literature. Because, like, your average Tolkien book reader will understand you can't have Luthien do that.
Yeah.
It's just not in her. Whereas Beren, you could have him totally just kill his enemies because it's in him. He's a warrior. He's an outlaw. It's the difference between Maid Marian and Robin Hood. Maid Marian can't kill, like, the Sheriff of Nottingham. That'd be wrong. She basically grew up with the guy. Like, that'd be wrong. But Robin can, because the two are enemies and arch rivals. I know Mark's gonna take me down perfectly. It's soft power, so to speak. Yeah, you're right. Galadriel of the hair thing would be Rapunzel then. Don't know if I can unthink that now. True. But Luthien does the Rapunzel, Mark. But, well, shoot, I overclicked it. But it is also part of Elvendom magic. Finrod also battles Sauron with words and song. Yeah, that's precisely it. And I'll also say, Eleanor, you brought up modern fantasy earlier, and you pointed out what Tolkien would do.
Modern fantasy. Okay, got it.
You brought it up earlier with how what Tolkien would do and what they would do, and most of them don't really seem to do the elvish song magic thing. You know what I mean? Like, singing their magic into existence. And this is something I'm eager to check out and try out with my own stories, um, because it's something that should be brought back. It's something very mystical, very beautiful about Tolkien. Here, I'll just put this aside for now. Let me see. Oh, I'm at the next page. No, wait, I'm at the right page. Yeah. Now we get to one of my favorite parts when Luthien of all of a sudden starts dancing before Morgoth.
Yeah.
And I wonder, are we supposed to look at her dance like how she did her hair thing, like enchanting the people below her tower into sleep? Is that what's going on? Or is it just that Morgoth is just staring until he just falls asleep? I like to think
I
there's
think
magic in there.
it's her magic. Yeah, it's her
Mm,
magic. Yeah, because dance is a kind of art, right?
mhm,
So, uh, I think Tolkien once said in some article or something, he said, for elves, art is magic. So
mm. Yeah, he
we
did.
human talks about magic, and elf will say that, oh, it's just we do daily life, it's our art. So I think when Luthien is doing the art thing, she's using her magic,
Mm.
obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think with her, no, she beguiles him. That's the term used, but once again, he falls into lust. Um, this is like Tolkien's making that traditional distinction between love and lust. One is
Yeah.
obviously a vice, and the other is a virtue. And he keeps using careful, he's very careful of his language. He keeps being very careful to not um, mix these two. He's distancing them so that you can differentiate them from each other. It's
Yeah.
something I very much appreciate à propos de lui. He gets it. He knows there's a difference, and he, of course, um, uh, the entire court falls into a slumber, and the Iron Crown hits the ground as Morgoth falls over from his throne. And it's intriguing that he falls under the spell. Luthien is so mighty that Morgoth falls under the spell. And it really,
So the
I think I
yeah.
did a video years ago where I said Luthien is the ring of Melian, like Melian's ring, because she imbued her Maiarness into Luthien. And I think it's never been clearer than in this moment when Luthien utterly enchants and ensorcels Morgoth. And it
Mm.
is, I have to admit, one of my favorite scenes. And of course, you have Angrist that's removed and cuts out a Silmaril. But this is where we get something very fascinating that happens. Beren goes for a second one. He was only supposed to get one, but the lure of the Silmarils is upon him. Oh, to be honest, both ways, for the dancers as well as the watchers. Oh, people dancing can definitely be a mesmerizing thing, magical, so to speak. Yeah, yeah. I've seen, excuse me. I've actually seen a little bit of. I've seen a few dances in person. Um, I've also seen musical symphonies in person, and um, I've noticed, as enchanted as I became, the musicians were also enchanted by their own what they were producing. I do believe you've probably been to a few symphonies. You must have noticed they do that too. Like they're
Yeah.
absorbed in the music. Yeah. because I know over in Asia, symphonies are uh, a big deal there as well. Isn't there like one in every city or something, or like two or three? Okay.
I think so.
Mhm. Oh,
I said
I'm
I think
just
so. Yes.
yeah. I'm just gonna have to take a minute. The dogs.
Okay.
One sec.
Okay. Fine.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Um. Um. Okay. Thankfully,
Okay. Welcome back.
someone. Yep. It's been so long. I hope everyone liked the intermission. So we have Baron who gets greedy. Like it says something that even he succumbs to the Silmaril. Like he's lured in by the other two. I think had he grabbed a second one, he would have been corrupted. But um, that's just because I think the
Mhm.
Silmarils have such a pull on people. It's not that they are like the One Ring; it's just they have a pull on people. They're so beautiful. But it says something. Now I'm actually going to compliment Thingol. Thingol was able to resist his for years, for at least a decade or two. It's not till he
Mhm.
breaks down mentally and spiritually that he finally gives in. And that also takes the dragon's sickness to do so, and the loss of his foster son, whom in Nordic custom would be counted as basically his actual son in some ways. So, he basically lost his child. So, and that's not something that any parent should ever endure. Um, so, yeah. Naturally, Karkaroff wakes up as the two are fleeing because uh, Morgoth starts to steer and they want to get out of there like a bat out of hell. Quite literally, considering she had worn the coat of a bat for a portion of the trip. So they quite literally are trying to get the heck out of there. And along the way, how do I put it? Beren is disarmed by Karkaroff. He loses a hand. Nah, I'm not going to crack any more hand jokes. Um, uh, and I was waiting for Mark to clown on me because I keep full screening the thing because I like to look at the map. Um, yeah, what I noticed now, one difference I noticed in this version of the text and in other ones, I think in another one he doesn't thrust the Silmaril, but tries to like just shield himself with his arm. But in this one, Christopher went with the decision that he should thrust the Silmaril at the wolf. And Karkaroff takes the bait, but the minute he tears off that arm, or that, I think it's only at the wrist or something, like right below the elbow, uh, a, how do I put it? His meal doesn't agree with him, and the Silmaril starts to burn him from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it is interesting that Karkaroff apparently has toxins within him. This is something which I've been bitten by dogs and by other canines, and
Oh.
in the past. And the thing is, one concern that's always had by people around you is if the wound will get infected. And because if it gets infected, you might end up losing a limb or something. Or,
Mm.
you could get very sick. It could cause all sorts of problems. And I think this is a bit of a heightened version of that. because Tolkien's heightening an infected wound into a poison venom filled wound. Um, but in my case, it comes from living in the countryside most of my life, and some dogs are feral, some aren't. Some dogs are, um, well, there's also coyotes and whatnot, all about. And of course, Thorondor comes to the rescue of Beren and Luthien because Beren's fallen into a swoon. Um, and Luthien heals Beren. This is a scene I have to admit I forgot in between my readings of this text. So I was very much surprised by this scene, and I went, "Wait, I don't remember that." And
You
that was
mean
really cool.
Luthien healed Baron this thing?
Yeah, yeah. Like
Okay.
the scene where she heals him is one I had forgotten, and because his spirit wandered upon the dark borders of death and whatnot. Um, I believe she heals him, doesn't she? Um,
Yeah. She healed
yeah,
him.
she does. Yeah, and I love this quote. Then suddenly, when her hope was almost spent, he woke again and looked up, seeing leaves against the sky, and he heard beneath the leaves, singing soft and slow beside him, Luthien Tenuviel, and it was spring again. That is that is beautiful
Yeah.
because I think we're supposed to look at this seasonally because Tolkien was very aware of archetypes and mythology. So when they meet, it's summer. Then when he goes off and there's Sauron and whatnot, it's autumn. Then going into Morgoth's prison, I guess we're supposed to look at it as winter. And now it is spring. So that's been the
At
triumph of
each
life
point,
over death.
because talking wrote like the beauty of Luthien is like spring. So
Mm-hmm.
she kind of bring the spring out of the world.
Yeah, he's also making the comparison to, I think, to Persephone, because Persephone is the spring maiden. She brings spring to Erebus when she goes down to visit her husband,
Yeah.
and then when she's leaving her beloved husband to go back to her mother, she's brings spring to the mortal realm, and this is supposed to be the idea that so beautiful you bring the spring, as you said. Um, I believe, uh, well, uh, strangely, the Norse ended up gender bending it. So that's in a way, when Ragnarok happens, it'll be Balder who brings the spring of a new world, of a new life, in a way, to everything after Othin and the Aesir have fallen. So Tolkien is very much writing in a mythological mode here, even though he starts off like the story starts off more like a Grimm's fairy tale, and now he's moved into
Yeah.
myth, and it it is it is beautiful beyond words,
Yeah.
and it is something I really am quite amazed by. And of course, we have they're resting on the peaks of Chrysagrim, Chrysagrim. Can't talk today. Um, and Baron is now named Urkamion, uh, Urkamion, one-handed, and suffering was graven in his face. So he's aged a little. He's now like, um, he's like, I'm not saying old, but it's just you can see what he's endured in his face and in his eyes now.
Yeah.
And I think what Tolkien is expressing here is when you suffer, uh, you can see it in someone when you look on them.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
something that,
He was seasoned.
yeah. Oh, let's see. Was Thingol corrupted in a way the moment he sends Beren? No, he wasn't. Because remember, he later, well, we're getting to his reaction when he sees Beren. He's very much happy to see him. It's just Thingol's a hothead. He makes certain decisions, then he regrets them. But on the other hand,
I can understand.
yeah, I'm a well, I'm French. I'm a Celt, so we make a hot-headed move and then we regret and whatnot. It's also something in the male genome, it seems. I'm joking. But as to wanting him to die, yeah, Finrod sees through that in a heartbeat. Yeah. Let me see. Isn't dragon blood and meat also poisonous? Yes, it is. That would fit Luthien's soft power way to do things. Aren't elven healers supposed to not join in war battle? For if they do, their healing abilities are diminished. Yeah, I think that is how it works. Tolkien draws a very distinctive line across, like separating battle and whatnot. I think, though, we have to bear in mind kings can still heal, even if they're blooded. Aragorn being an example. But this falls back onto medieval folklore regarding the healing hands of kings like the Capetiens, who were said to have healed various sicknesses, like Scrofula, I think, with a touch. And that, the idea of that being a gift of theirs was because the Capetian kings would always go down to do charity, and they touched lepers, and they would I think one or two of them even kissed the feet of lepers just to humble themselves. And they would do these things, and people spread stories that they could heal with their touch and whatnot. The idea is that the founding fathers of the church fathers and Jesus could. So surely the French kings could. Actually, the French kings couldn't. They were not able to do that. But there was some sort of story that spread because they were spending time with the sick and they were humbling themselves. What's interesting is that this added to the saintly glow, to the sense of kingliness of the French kings. The German, the
Yeah.
English, the Spanish kings all tried to imitate this later. Because I know Hugues' son, Rabel, Rabel was doing this. He was going out into the streets and helping people, and he was very much a guy willing to go out into the streets and talk with people. Because the first few Roman emperors, like Augustus and Julius Caesar, did this. Now, Chinese, Korean, and Japanese emperors did not do this. It's just you have a clear division in social rank that's there. I think, though, let me think. I think there was a few shoguns who went out and hung out with the peasants on occasion, but not too often. Korean princes sometimes went out, but like there's a difference between a prince and an emperor. Like, yeah. So, anyways, but how much
Yeah.
of Blader coming back as the only good god, Balder, after the others are gone, is Christianizing influence? I take the theory that it's pre-Christian in a lot of ways, but it might be Christianizing influence. It might be. But the reason I take the stance it precedes Christianity coming into the North is only that I have the theory of the same theory Tolkien has. I'm a Catholic, so I view it as every myth and legend has shards of the truth. They had shards and pieces of the actual truth. So, like, they may not have had contact with Christianity, but there's contact and there's contact. You know what I mean? Like, there was a knowledge that this is what comes after the end of the world, instinctive in their genome almost, and that when Christianity comes in, that's why it clicks into place so well, because it fits with the Balder myth. If that makes any sense. If it doesn't, tell me I'm crazy and I'll shut up. But it's that, like I said, Tolkien and Lewis had the view, even a lot of 20th century and 19th century authors and people, especially of mythology and folklore, took the view myth and legend is a window to the truth, to what will happen and what has happened. And that, like, uh, the Balder thing um, hints at Christianity even before the contact with Christianity that we'd see in history. I've been looking up a little bit of J.K. Chesterton recently. He was at the cutting edge of uh, the history intermingled with metaphysics and spirituality and whatnot. He had very advanced theories about it. Um, and I think a lot of it is way over my head, and I should perhaps do videos on it trying to understand what Chesterton was trying to say. I don't know. Maybe that's something I'll have to look up into. People on Substack have been wanting me to do that stuff. Now, that's said. Thingol, while Luthien's been gone, has been kind of depressed because he done screwed up. He really should not have sent his daughter into, I don't want to say exile, but up into a tower or a tree, I should say, and he's been moping, for lack of a better term. Darren, the minstrel, ended up straying from the land and was seen no more. So he goes off because he's
That's
fearful
so
for her.
sad.
I kind of think Darren
Yeah.
deserved it. But he ends up
Why?
singing of her beauty. Well, come on. He keeps ratting her out. He stalks her. I don't have much pity
Okay.
for him. Because he sold out Beren in the hopes Beren would be killed by Thingol. So I don't have much pity for
Okay, that makes
Darren.
sense.
But come on, he's celebrated as the greatest minstrel in the history of the Eldar. So, like, come on, he gets a reward for being a creep.
But it seems very funny to me. Very funny to me that the greatest minstrel, the two greatest minstrel of Eldar just just kind of lost in the history, Darren and Maglor. They kind of just lost in the history, and nobody knows where they are.
I think they're supposed to be mirror images of each other.
Yeah,
We're,
they met in the how do I call it? The gathering thing,
they're supposed to be
I don't know
like
how to say it.
opposites. Like you're supposed to read one and think of the other. I think,
Yeah.
and I think with these two, Tolkien is making some sort of commentary. I think about, I don't know, like maybe a lot of poets and musicians, there being grief and sorrow mixed in with art or something. I don't know. He's
Yeah.
making some sort of commentary, but I think it's
But
over my head.
okay. But I think Darren, though
Mm,
he was a very great minstrel, but he was not a
mm,
warrior, so cannot he couldn't protect himself in the dark time. He kind of just lost in the
mm.
forest and was killed by some wolf or something.
Very likely.
Yeah.
But we know he went into the east of Middle Earth. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know how far east, because it could be Middle Earth itself, like that region, or even further east. Tolkien's not clear. I think it's further east, and he's killed there, like you said. Um, and we have, of course, Kelligorm, who rears his ugly head. Well, no, his fair-haired head. Um, I must make it clear he's fair to look upon. He's Gaston. So, um, of course, they end up deciding to basically claim that Felagund was dead, Beren is dead, and Luthien is in Nargothrond, and that Kelligorm's married her. And they expect that they'll be able to somehow manipulate Thingol. they don't screw it up. No, this is just leading to a disaster, as Thingol does not react in the way they think, where he'll just do whatever they tell him to do. His reaction is one to summon his banners and start preparing for war, because he's in a rage that they have his daughter and that they killed Beren. He's pretty darn ticked off. And oops. Oh,
Bless you.
Thank you. But the stream shutting up, I don't think a stream is supposed to work that way. No. Oh, yeah. Thank you for the smarminess, Mark. Couldn't do it without you. I would like to throw in Finrod in this greatest elf.
In this
I think Finrod's better.
Minstrel question.
I think he's better.
It's not really, you know what? They can make a band. You know, make a boy band.
Yeah, you and Lexi would love that. You two would love that, because each of them are supposed to be good looking. And maybe throw in Luthien as the occasional lead singer. Her and Finrod could maybe do a duet. But Thingol also tries to turn to Melian, but she's not happy with him. She's like, no, I'm not giving you any advice. You didn't accept it before. I'm not giving any. And we have trouble in paradise there in that marriage. We know from the Children of Húrin they make peace, but I think it's interesting that Tolkien hints at a bit of a troubled marriage here, in that she was right, and she is right that they have to see this through to the end. But it does show that he realizes he screwed up, and Melian's not willing to just let him off the hook. So, you know, it's a little interesting he throws that dynamic in there. I really like it. Beren comes back, and alongside Luthien, and of course, Thingol's astonished, and because he thought Beren was dead. And he's like, yeah, I'm still not sure about, I'm not sold on you. But then he asks him, what of your question of your vow? And Beren answers, it is fulfilled. Even now a Silmaril is in my hand. And Thingol gets eager and goes, show it to me. Beren puts out his left hand. Slowly opens his fingers. Nothing. Then he holds out his right, and there is no hand. So he becomes known as Camlost, the empty-handed. Now, interesting little thing, Camlost rhymes a little with Camelot. That is to say, the kingdom and city of King Arthur, which is lost. And Tolkien says empty-handed here. Very fitting that it should also rhyme, like I said, with Camelot, which ends up with an empty throne. And of course, the reaction of Thingol is not to get angry, but rather to kind of start liking Beren. I think Beren's grown on him in part because the two are very similar, and also Beren's done what no other man could do.
What's the similarities?
Well,
What's the
bear in mind,
similarity?
Fingal got lost in the woods and met Melian that way. Beren got lost in the woods and
Okay,
met
that
Luthien.
okay.
And they both ended up
That's true. Yeah.
pursuing. And they're both impulsive and end up falling in love with these very enchanting ladies. We'll use enchanting. I like that word. Enchantant. But of course, Karkaroff, meanwhile, is racing through the woods, howling and killing because his belly's on fire. Um, and of course, uh, now that there's no war on the horizon, it's time for a hunt. Baron, Thingol, and Juan go off to go find themselves Karkaroff, and because it's wolf season, and this is where the tale really takes a tragic turn, and well, Juan tries to fight him because Juan's the best bet they've got, and of course, Juan is wounded, and Baron is killed, and Juan slays Karkaroff, and speaks for the third time because he's spoken before, encouraging Baron at least once, and also telling him don't separate yourself from Luthien. Now he speaks to him for the last time, and you know, let me just find it. He bids Baron farewell, showing that he has grown attached to Baron as well. And Baron places his hand upon the head of the hound, and they both die together. I think that's probably the most romantic, one of the most romantic scenes in the entire story.
Really?
That's kind of, yeah, it's kind of how
Not
I want to.
between Beren Luthien and the dog.
Yeah, because he just lays his hand on the head of the dog, and the two pass away together.
Aww.
It does not get more romantic than that. Because man's best friend.
Doggy is the best.
Yep, they are. Beren is fine, but Finrod, the most beloved of the princes.
The last episode.
What?
I said we talk about Finrod in the last episode.
Finrod camps
We'll
in
come
the
to
woods.
check it out because it wouldn't be found it by the. Yeah.
Beor and his people.
I think Beor and his people were sleeping, right? And Finrod was kind of just like playing the harp, and Beor and his people woke up, and it's like Finrod must be a very good player, like harp player, like a musician. If he is not, he is making loud voice in my sleep. I would definitely like, what the heck? Who the hell is singing?
So I think even if he's
very good.
Yeah, because they're basically just going, "What the hell?" And then they set eyes on him and listen to him, and they're just enchanted. There's something. I'll refer to one of the first I think it is the first Conan story, where Howard has Conan, who's a king, who's a barbarian king over a civilized kingdom, comment about a poet who's scheming to kill him. I can no more kill him than, what was it he says? Here, I'll actually find it. I could find the quote real quick, because the thing is, it's in Phoenix on the Sword, and it's a fascinating scene because Conan is encouraged to get rid of this poet who is definitely conspiring against him. And he's, because the poet hates him and is singing about how much he hates Conan and wants to kill Conan. But Conan, what was it? let's see. What does he say? His friend says Ronaldo, who is the poet, is largely responsible for rousing the people against Conan. He says, Prospero says, he sings songs that make men mad. Hang him in his jester's garb to the highest tower in the city. Let him make rhymes for the vultures. And Conan says, no, Prospero. He's beyond my reach. A great poet is greater than any king. His songs are mightier than my scepter, for he has near ripped the heart from my breast when he chose to sing for me. I shall die and be forgotten, but Ronaldo's songs will live forever. And the sad thing is, Conan actively tries not to kill Ronaldo, but Ronaldo gets himself killed. Anyways, and Conan grieves in that story for him. But what Howard is saying is, like in some ways, music has a power and a life all to itself that could rip your heart out from your breast and lay you low. And speaking of which, when she gets the news of what happened, Luthien takes off for the realm of Mandos. And there she stands before the throne of Mandos and sings of her woo. And I think we're supposed to think of Orpheus. I know Matt would bring him up. But like I said, I thought of that quote with Conan, and I think she does rip the beating heart of Mandos out from his chest. And he is moved to pity. Mandos, if people will recall, is a lot like Hades. And as with Orpheus, he's moved to tears and he, gives him permission to leave. But Orpheus screws it all up and ends up sobbing by the river pathetically. Luthien, for her part, succeeds. She takes Beren and brings him back across the Western Sea. But she ends up having to trade by this time. She's made the choice to trade her immortality for mortality. And from what I've gleaned from this story, she does it with no regrets, which is very remarkable. Mm-hmm. Because this is where, it's beyond remarkable. And she gets home, finds her dad basically in a catatonic state. Let me see. Where was it? I thought it was in one of these. It might be in the actual tome. Let me try to find it.
I think it's in the next chapter.
Okay, let me see.
Chapter 20 of the 5th battle.
Oh, yeah. She goes to Menegroth and heals the winter of Thingol with the touch of her hand. So he was evidently grieving, thinking she was gone forever. And I think we should mention this part because it's more tied to this. Thingol, lets her marry the man she loves. And and no grief of loss has been heavier than the grief of Melian the Mire in that hour. Melian grieves for her daughter, and for the parting they have, because she knows her daughter will die someday. But Thingol, I think, is aware, but he's just relieved to have her back, even for a time. And I think he kind of respects her choice. We got to bear in mind, not long after this, he takes in Turin to Rambar. So
yeah,
I think there's an understanding there that this is her destiny, her fate. And what is more is that Beren and Thingol have come to an understanding of some sort. There's something interesting that's happened is that Thingol, Beren, Melian, Luthien, they've basically become a family. and the torch
Yeah,
in some ways has been passed um, from generation to generation there. But um, but I think it's a seasonal story, and it's one of the greatest Tolkien ever wrote. But I also think there is something there that Tolkien does with how Luthien goes eagerly to her marriage, and there's no regret whatsoever. She gives up her mortality, and she passes away later on. I think alongside Beren, they both die around the same time. We're not. It's not clear. They both go back. They go to where mortal men go. If we compare that to Arwen, when Aragorn dies, Arwen regrets her mortality. She's like, I finally understand um, what those who defied
what that
Eru,
means.
yeah,
Yeah.
why they did it. And Aragorn is not happy about that. He's like, what the hell are you talking about? No, it's my time.
You made that choice long before.
Yeah. And I think this shows this is a clear difference between Jackson and Tolkien in a way. I think Tolkien is showing, the great defeat of history, the long defeat, wherein people become lesser and
Yeah.
lesser than those before. But
Yeah,
he's also showing.
because
Go ahead.
Luthien was born and raised in a very a protected realm, in kind of during the time of, you can say, like the golden age
Peace.
of elves. So and Luthien was kind of full of energy and full of strength. But when it comes to, let's say, when it comes to Arwen, the the time of elf has passed away, and all she can feel is kind of overwhelming sadness upon her.
Hmm. Precisely.
Yeah.
And I think I think the difference is what I like in the thematically is the fact that I don't know if we're supposed. I think we're supposed to pity Arwen, but we're not supposed to agree with her in a way. Like, you made a choice. You have to live with the consequences of
Yeah,
your action.
elaborate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be accountable for our
Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah.
Arwen does not want to be. Like, you know what I mean? She's like, well, I didn't want to bury my husband. Like, she didn't think about it, and she's like, oh gosh, I'm going to die of old age here, and whatnot. But you got to live with it. But what we know is that, and what I find so interesting is that the descendants of Elros regret Elros's decision, but Elros does not. Elrond actually understands why Elros did it. Elros did it because, for one thing, we know, the mortal men needed a leader. Elros stepped up. But the other thing is, Elros wanted to go to the same place. Well, Elros wanted to live amongst men. He did not want to be an elf. Elrond chose to be an elf. They made two different choices that split them. No, that and but we know they remained close. I just mean, like, it split the lineage.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and Luthien obviously didn't regret. So, and what's interesting is Elwing, I believe, chooses immortality, and Earendil chooses it but regrets. And
Yeah, very
I think
interesting. They kind of regretted their choices.
I think Earendil
Yeah.
and Arwen, they're opposites in that they choose the opposite choice, but there's a similar regret. Like, there's buyer's remorse. But I think with Elrond, the interesting thing is he chooses the same fate as his father, um, but his brother, I think, does something very interesting, chooses the fate his father wanted to choose. And that this is a very fascinating thing. Tolkien
Yeah.
is, I think, trying to teach that life is full of regrets. You have to live with your decisions, though.
Yeah.
It's sometimes not very
Yes.
fun.
Very
It's not very
interesting.
cool.
Very interesting.
And
Yeah.
let me see.
Just have to
Um,
live with it.
mm, oh, let's see. Um, uh, Eleanor,
I'm
sorry,
sorry,
but
but
Finrod is
Finrod
my
is my favorite elf in all of Zelda. You can't fault people. No, it's okay. Finrod is very likable character. We all love Finrod.
yeah, but he's not Fingolfin. Joking. I
Ooh.
have to crack. I recently watched The 13th Warrior again, where Bolaway, while dying, says, "A man would truly be rich if there is somebody writing down his deeds so that they are not forgotten." Et oui, c'est toujours comme ça.
Very good saying. That's a very good saying.
Have you seen The 13th Warrior?
No, but this line is very beautiful, I think. A
Yeah,
man would
it's a bit.
truly be rich.
It's a it's a Norse movie. Um,
Okay.
it's really interesting. Has Antonio Banderas before his career went down? Well, no, wait, it didn't go bad. It's that Antonio Banderas had his choice split. Like he was Zorro. He was very popular in American media, and then he decided he wanted to go into Spanish media because he was Spanish, and he decided to go back to his roots. He didn't want to stay in the Anglosphere. Very fascinating choice. Very good actor. Very popular, but he preferred his own people and whatnot. I think Jackie Chan did something similar eventually, preferring to do more Chinese media than American media eventually. And I know a few French actors who've done that. It's interesting. A lot of them will go into American media, then go back. Will go back home, which their choice. Now let me see. Where are you? That dark speech. Where are you, Gandalf? Oh, right. Let's see if I can pronounce it right. Ashnas Toba Tuluk. Okay. Ashnask Turba Tuluk Ashnazg Gimbatul Ashnazg Thraka Tuluk Ak Bozumishi Krimpatul. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. I love that one.
I can never do that. Good job.
I don't know. What, do that voice or read that text?
Both.
Um,
Both.
okay. Sorry, I have to leave. 6 age slavery calls me back. Oh, I'm
Oh,
so
come
sorry to
again.
hear.
Come again. We will do the next great stories in the future. Come
Yeah,
again. We will meet
definitely.
again.
And yeah,
Yeah.
but let's see. Nosotros, los lobos estamos uh, regresando. Must be Spanish.
Okay, I even pronounced that.
Um, I'm trying to learn a bit of Spanish, just a smidgen, because there's on Substack. There's a
Oh,
lot of
Spanish, right?
Spanish. Yeah, there's a Spanish.
Oh, okay.
There's thousands of Spanish writers and readers over there, and I'm trying to interact with them. There's a lot of them and Germans, so I'm trying to interact with them so that I
Okay.
can try to understand and also get them as readers because they love fantasy and historic fiction. So it's great to lure them in. The Spanish, though, prefer my French stuff because they understand it a lot better. Eh, except for one or two of them who prefer the Spanish stuff. I mean, the English stuff. The Germans are more drawn to my Anglo stuff. So it's a little interesting the contrast, how they're very, very different, and yet the two have well. Spain and Germany in medieval history teamed up against France at one point. So it's a little interesting that one likes one thing, one likes the other, and yet that interaction. Nice. Hope I lived up to the expectations. I'll have to practice for the Monday stream with Matt. Um, but good luck with work. Here in Canada, um, Holy Week has a few days off. Like Fridays, no one's like we. It's Good Friday because it's like we have Thursday. You always finish early. I think here or in a lot of places do. Friday is off. Everything's closed. Saturday, everything is closed. Sundays, everything is closed. Monday, everything is closed. And then on Tuesday, everything starts again. And this is where it's especially further up north, it's even more closed. I think they sometimes, well, it's because French Canada is still Catholic. So everything is like shuttered and closed. On such days like the week up to Christmas, everything is closed almost. They'll occasionally open up not the restaurants, the grocery stores, just so people could buy food, but they shutter very early because, and if you suggest that people should open, people get angry because it's about religion. But I actually think some grocery stores should still be kept open. But I live in an English area, so for too long, so because I want to go back to my Franco roots. Here, there are, I think it's some stuff, some stores will be open tomorrow, but not today, and only for a brief time. Sunday, everything's closed. Monday, some things will be open, some things will be closed, and only for a few hours. I have no idea how it is over where you are, Eleanor. But here we're basically a Christian country, so we have all those different holidays and weird. They're weirdly like put. Like we got a bunch of holidays in April, then we've got a bunch I think a few in May, then a bunch in June, and then a bunch next time it's like in October, then next time it's in December, and no, wait, there's one in November, and then there's one in December, and then so it's like we've got a bunch all over the place. It's weird. But interestingly, in the medieval period, there was a lot more because the feast days of certain saints.
Yeah.
But some of them are starting to come back, like Saint Joseph. It's so odd. Just I don't know. Just interacting with some people online in Quebec.
In general, holidays.
Yeah, there's just a few holidays making a comeback from like 100 years ago, and people want to get that going. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's mostly in Quebec because Quebec has very strong Christian roots, so and sensibilities. So like whenever I travel there, it's not everyone goes to church, but they have those sensibilities and those attitudes and mores. And there's just a horror of anything not like of French heritage or Christian heritage. Unless, of course, it's Japanese or Chinese or Korean literature, at which point it's like, okay, that's allowed in, but culturally, like, it's a little insular in that regard. It's pretty cool. In that regard, it's a lot like the Europe of old in the Orient, I guess. But anyways, yeah, so I recited it as Mark wanted. I actually have to read the rest of the Council of Elrond because I've slacked off in preparation for this. Next time, I'm thinking we should maybe do the Nir Nayef Arnodiad.
The
I
fifth
think that could
battle.
be, yeah, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears.
Okay, that would be interesting.
Yeah, depressing. But let me actually just quickly check to make sure. Yes, my wall. Of the fifth battle, because let me see, of Turin to Rambar. All right. When we get to chapter 21, of the story of Turin Turambar.
20, 21. Okay.
I was
Okay.
going to say we'll switch over to the novel Children of Hurin.
Great.
And
Great. Because it's more detailed.
yeah, precisely. And there's a lot more detail in there. And then we'll come back to
Yeah.
the chapter and just, or maybe well, we'll see whether we want to or not because it's so detailed. But Children of Hurin is so depressing.
Yeah.
And it's like, I like the Fall of Gondolin, but Gondolin has so much more hope than Children of Hurin, where it's it's just
It's a very interesting topic
and
about touring.
because he just um, tearful, one might say, yeah, tearful. That's a good word, Sturbomo. Uh, I think we French would say mélancolique, a somber and melancholic. To be honest, the Children of I better put this on the screen. To be honest, the Children of Hurin I only read
I
once. I mean, certain parts I read several times. It's too
It's too
depressing indeed.
too depressing indeed.
Yeah. This story of Beren Luthien though is one of my favorites because it's much more romantic.
Yeah.
And you've got that song she sings to Mandos, which I really like that. And it is, I think, a scene that had an influence on Tolkien for the rest of his life. Because
Yes.
in a letter near the end of his life, when he buries Edith, he complains that he can't go to Mandos and sing to have her back, and his story has gone crooked. And it's strangely more depressing to read than the fifth letter where all his friends died, because that's a relationship which was, I think, what, 60 years? Because like he was 12, he's like, let me see. He meets her in 1904, I believe. Yeah, it's around 1904 or 1903. She dies around, what was it? 1970, I believe. Let me see. I think she's a fascinating woman. Few housewives ever, yeah, okay, 1971. Few housewives ever accomplish or like leave such an indelible mark as she did without being a writer. Now, I consider her an editor, though, which, like, you know, she lived to be 82 years old. Wow. She lived a full life. And
Yeah.
um, she dies at least, I think, what, 2 years before Tolkien does?
2 or 3 years before him, I
Yeah.
suppose.
He dies in 73 at 81 years old.
Yeah.
And the two of them, it's a loss, I think, that remains with him. He does move back to Oxford, I believe. But because he didn't want to leave, but he left for her because she wanted to go. But I just find that one of the most sad incidences in his life. So the real life Beren and Luthien story ends on I think, a little sad note. But there's hope because, well, for me, I'm a Catholic. I don't know about you. So I think, they're reunited in the afterlife. And, so he's reunited with his friends, his mom, his dog from his youth, and his wife. So there's a happy ending there.
You mean
For the real
afterlife?
life. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the afterlife, he's reunited with his wife, with his Luthien. And if
Yeah.
we look at the tombstone marker.
Yeah. But I think, in my opinion, their happy ending lies in the story of Beren and Luthien in literature, because now
Mhm.
Beren and Luthien is a famous story now. That, like, everyone knows that story. It's very famous. It's very classic, and because of that, Tolkien and Edith will live on inside
Yep.
Middle Earth, inside the story. I think it's very beautiful, and funny, very fascinating thing I realized that day.
Mhm.
One day, I just sat there and I suddenly realized that it is like Barrett and Luthien's son, like Christopher talking. He added the addition, right? The addition of this book. He added this book, so he basically he was retelling his parents' love story through the
Mhm.
editing work. And it's painful. It must be painful for him to, go through all these materials for him, because it's too personal for him. It's his parents after all. But
He,
at the same time, it's beautiful.
yeah, he must have been both. There must have been a sad element, but also a. I think he was also moved.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
in one documentary, he mentions he's very moved when he goes through his father's research and uh, a lot of the notes and books and stories and whatnot, and that he always loved them best of all literature. And Christopher himself was a very special, great man of history.
Yeah,
Um, I don't think there was ever an editor in history who had to do what he did, step up to fulfill the Tolkien legacy, and did it so perfectly. And I remember when he passed, people online were saying there was never a greater son in history. You know what I mean? Like no father
yeah,
was, especially in the past few hundred years, ever so blessed to have such a great son who dedicated his life to fulfilling his father's work and making
yeah,
sure everybody had the story of Beren and Luthien, fall of Gondolin, all that. And I I think the real life Dior is far greater than the literary Dior.
yeah,
um, but
yeah,
I but yeah, I think Tolkien and Edith uh, live together in literature, in spirit, and whatnot. And I think that there definitely is something that we should learn from that. And um, I think that given the Inklings were also trying to reverse certain modern trends in art and literature and culture, I think, like keeping women female and feminine and men masculine is very important as well here because Baron's very masculine, Luthien's very feminine.
yeah,
And I'm not
yeah,
trying to do an agenda thing here, but I just mean, how is it that we have all these girls in stories wielding axes and swords, but we don't have them singing beautiful songs before Mandos and enchanting people so they fall asleep? Or, um, you know what I mean? Doing what Luthien does. How is it that it's only Tolkien who did that in his stories? I know there's the Disney princesses, and they're great, but we've not since then done that. It's just, I don't know. I think we took a wrong turn. You know what I mean? Un tourné pour le mal. We took a wrong turn, and I think um, I think more people should read the story of Luthien.
yeah.
Um,
I think so.
to Yeah, because it's very beautiful. Um, then again, they should also read Children of Hurin far more because it would endow them with
They
a bit
should
of
read both.
depression.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
because
but
uh, because Beren and Luthien story is like the most hopeful and optimistic story in the first age. I think. And
Mm-hmm.
the children of Hurin story is the most depressing. So it's like you have the balance, right? You have
Mm.
the most hopeful one, and you have to have the depressing one, because Tolkien is very much like he wanted to he wanted a full history. You can't
Mm.
just have happiness in the whole history. You have Beren Luthien,
Mm.
yes, then you must have the children of Hurin. So you have happiness and sadness in the whole story. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
you're absolutely right, and that he does this on purpose. And you need,
yeah, he does.
um,
He did.
yeah. Now, when I was younger as a writer, I shrinked from sad or bad scenes. But as you get older, you have to have that if you want a full history. And I think
Yeah,
Tolkien realized that. Now, um, I think that Tolkien also does a lot of things better than everyone else in that he also shows the brutality of evil and the like. Children of Hurin just it's so depressing. It's so dark. But
yeah,
on the other hand, I think writers should read the Silmarillion and try to take lessons from it. And I've met a lot of writers on Substack, and a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them don't want to write full histories or like things as depressing as Children of Hurin. A lot of them won't even touch it. But I think they should. They could learn a lot from it and
yeah,
Beren Luthien and that balance, like you said. Um, it's, um, but I think it's also indicative of the genuine losses and suffering Tolkien has endured, given World War One. And I had to do a podcast on his experiences on World War One just the other day, and it was a depressing topic because the TCBS was about 40 members and they were thinned down to like 3 or 4 uh,
mm,
due to World War One, and it's just you look at that and you realize just how bad his life was, and yet he still managed
yeah,
to see hope. He still managed to because Tolkien endured in some ways his own children of Hurin, and he comes out the other side barren.
yeah,
So it's about choices, and I think as a writer, um, it's something which I could only dream of aspiring after. Um, so on that note, excuse me. Um, I guess we'll plug what we've got to plug, and we'll stop. And next time
okay.
we'll tackle that near
The fifth,
Nyeth or not
yeah,
yet.
yeah.
um,
Sorry,
which
I cannot pronounce it. I just call it the fifth battle,
okay,
or
the Battle of Unnumbered Tears.
yeah,
Okay, I like near Nyeth Arnaud. Um, but in French, I think it'd be Neil Nyeth Arnaud Diad. Um, because e's are never silent in our language. So
okay.
uh, Alnoe Diad, Alnoe Diad, um, which sounds even weirder in French and more poetic. But our language is more poetic and beautiful than English. I know Tolkien is tempted to rise up from the grave and just smack me over the head for that, but I
And
have to
sure,
poke
he
fun.
will. He will. Mark said, "Great screen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome back."
It's Eleanor's
Then
fault.
we have this. What? Excuse me. Okay. What the heck?
It's your fault. It was a great stream. I did my best to try to drag it down, but
I did my best too. I hope you enjoy it.
I tried to ruin it, and she just had to make it a delight. So uh, I will encourage everyone to check out Eleanor's Instagram, YouTube channel, and Oh, and there's also your WordPress I discovered when I followed you on Twitter. I had forgotten about that. Also, check out her WordPress, although I can't understand a lick of it because it's all in Mandarin. So, um, but her Instagram has some pretty interesting Tolkien stuff and videos on conventions, on Tolkien festivals, and some Greek stuff, which is pretty neat. And our YouTube videos on our channel are all about lore and the convention scene and whatnot in China. It's really neat. I really recommend everyone give it a follow. And on my end, I'll just say I'm over on Royal Road writing a bunch of serial fantasy novels, and I got to remember to upload stories there. I've not been as faithful as I should on that front. And also check out my two new books, Crown of Blood, which is a depressing read, much like Children of Hurin in that regard, and Caladbolg, which is much more hopeful and a much more Irish story. So, yeah. So until next time, do take care, everyone, and I'll just copyright infringe on. I'll infringe on the copyright of Tolkien Lore Geek and say Namarie. Or just
Bye.